Good morning, dear students. This lecture is for the BCom second semester for the subject Business Economics. So, in this subject, we are dealing with the third unit, that is theories of distribution. In last lecture, we had seen the modern theory of distribution, which is also called as theory of factor pricing. Thereby, we have determined how, with the help of forces of demand and supply, prices of factors are determined in the market. In today's lecture, we are going to see the theories of rent. So, first of all, we are going to start with the Ricardian theory of rent. When we talk about this theory, so it is one of the classical economic theory of the rent, and it is given by the David Ricardo in 19th century. Okay, even before the Ricardo, there were some economists like Adam Smith, Malthus, who were of the opinion that land acquires the rent due to its inelastic supply. But later on in 19th century, this idea has been given a scientific shape by economist David Ricardo, and that is why this theory is named after him, like Ricardian theory of rent. So before understanding this theory, if I'll ask you in general sense what is rent, so what's going to be answer? For example, there is Mr. A, okay, there is Mr. A who's running his coaching classes. He is not having his own space or the room whereby he can run the classes. So that is why from Mr. B, he has taken a land. Okay, he has taken a room. He has taken a space whereby he can conduct the lectures. So now, for providing his services, okay, for making the use of the space, it has been letted out by Mr. B to Mr. A. Now hereby the resources which are being owned by Mr. B is being used by Mr. A for the sake of his own use. Okay, so here the Mr. A is going to provide some return to Mr. B, okay, for using his resources, and this return or this reward is going to be called as, is going to be termed as rent. Okay, so basically when we talk about the rent, so it is the return which is given to the owners of factors of production for getting the services of those factors of production, right? But when we talk about the Ricardian theory of rent, so according to this theory, according to David Ricardo, rent is that portion of produce of earth which is paid to landlord for use of original and indestructible powers of soil. Thus, land gets rent for its natural and non-perishable parts. See, when we talk about the Ricardo's views regarding the rent, so he says that rent is the portion of the produce of earth which is given to the landlord for using the original and indestructible power of soil. See, when we use the land for the agricultural purpose, so of course we produce something, okay, and when the land is used for the agricultural purpose, so of course it has some original and indestructible power. Like some lands are fertile in nature, some lands are infertile in nature, okay, and all this natural or indestructible powers are possessed by land. Okay, so basically Ricardo says that the rent is that portion of produce of earth which is given to landlord for using the original and indestructible powers of soil. Okay, after that he says that the land gets rent for its natural and non-perishable power. See, according to Ricardo, land could not fetch any rent if it would not be having the power, okay, natural and the non-perishable power like fertility. It has those power, it has differences, and that is why different lands, different pieces of land fetches the different rent according to Ricardo. So I hope you guys are clear with the meaning of rent according to the opinion of Ricardo. Now we are going to see the reasons because of which this land fetches the rent. Land gets the rent. So first reason over here is differences. Now when I say differences, what you can interpret, what you can understand. So here the differences means differences in fertility, okay, differences in location. If the fertilities are different, of course the production is going to be different. If land is the more fertile, you're going to get more output. If land is less fertile, you're going to get less amount of output. So due to the difference of fertility, okay, the rent is getting changed over here. So that is why when we talk about the reasons for emergence of rent, so differences of land is also considered over there. Okay, differences of land is one of the reason for the emergence of rent. After that, scarce supply. If a particular country is having particular area of land, okay, or the world is having particular area of land, and if the demand for the land in the world is being increased, so can you increase the supply of land? Of course not. At any cost, supply of land cannot be increased in the world, and that is why land is considered to be the scarce resource which is having perfectly inelastic supply. Why I'm saying perfectly inelastic supply? Because even though the demand for the land changes, demand for the land increases, still supply of land can never be adjusted according to its demand. That is why land is the scarce resource. It's limited in supply, and that is why it faces rent. So scarce or the limited supply is one of the reason because of which land features the rent. After that, application of law of diminishing marginal utility. See, there is a piece of land. When it is being used for first time, it will give you 100 quintals of produce. When the same piece of land is being used for the second time, so produce will diminish. Okay, it might get 80 quintals. When the same piece of land is again being used for the third time, produce may diminish further. It might be 60 quintals. So this way, when the same piece of land is again intensively used for the sake of cultivation, so produce is getting diminished, the output is getting diminished. Okay, why? Because some indestructible powers are getting reduced. So that is why we say that on the land there is application of law of diminishing marginal utility, which is one of the reasons for the emergence of rent. Or for example, there is a piece of land on which the 10 workers are working. Okay, there is a piece of land on which the 10 workers are working, and this 10 workers are enough to have work on this land, to occupy this land completely optimally. And if you're going to employ the 11th worker, 12th worker, so this 11th worker or the 12th workers who are being employed for the production sec will not give any return, will not add to the production, but you will have to pay to them. That is why they are going to bring the diminishing marginal returns. Okay, so that is why we say that in case of the application of land, there is the application of law of diminishing marginal utility. So it is one of the reasons for the emergence of rent. After that, we have certain assumptions on which this Ricardian theory of rent is based. So let's see what are those assumptions. First assumption over here is free gift of nature. See, when we talk about the land, okay, so it is free gift of nature to the human, okay. You are, of course, you are paying rent to the owner of land, but land is not a man-made resource. It is the gift of nature, and nature is not asking for anything in return for giving you the land. That is why we are saying that it is free gift of nature. It is given by nature. It is not the man-made factor. Okay, like capital, it is a man-made factor. It is given to somebody and interest is paid. In the same way, land is owned by someone, then owner provides you that land, then you give rent to the owner of land. But the nature is giving the land and nobody is paying anything to the nature in return. That is why we say that land is a free gift of nature. Okay. The second assumption over here is original powers. So this theory is based on the assumption that lands are having original power of indestructibility, and it is having original natural powers. Okay, so it is having certain feature which cannot be destructed with the time. It is being assumed in this theory. After this, cultivation of land according to its fertility. As I have told you that the one of the reasons for the emergence of rent is the fertility, differences in fertility. Like some land may be more fertile, some land may be less fertile, some land may be there which is barren land. Okay, so here it's being said that the cultivation of land would be undertaken according to the order of its fertility. Means here it's being said that when the land will be used for the sake of cultivation, so first of all, superior land having the most fertile feature of more fertility would be used first. After that, the inferior land, which is less fertile, would be used. And if the requirement advises, if the requirement is there, then only the least fertile land would be used for the sake of cultivation purpose. Okay, so it is based on the assumption that land is always undertaken for the cultivation activity according to the order of its fertility. The next assumption under this theory is differences in fertility. As I have told you that there is always differences in fertility of different land which are situated at different area. Some lands may be more fertile, some lands may be less fertile. So if lands are more fertile, so you are going to get a better amount of output. If the lands are less fertile, you are going to get less amount of output. Okay, so there is always difference in fertility of land, and it is assumed in this theory. After that, perfect competition. Here it is assumed that the perfect competition exists in the land market. Means there are a number of buyers for the land, and there are a number of sellers for the services of the land. Okay, so it is assumed that there exists the perfect competition in the market for the land. After that, existence of no rent land. See, here the Ricardo assumes that there is some barren land whereby the cost of cultivation and the revenue which is being generated from the land is equal. In such cases, the Ricardo says the land fetches no rent. Say cost of cultivation for certain piece of land is 5,000, and whatever output you have produced by using that land is also being sold in the market for the 5,000. Means revenue is also 5,000. Means cost and revenue both are 5,000. Means here 5,000 minus 5,000 would be 0, and that is why such land would be called as no rent land. So according to this theory, the existence of no rent land is there. When the cost of cultivation is equals to the revenue generation, the land becomes the no rent land. After that, the application of law of diminishing marginal utility. So while explaining you the reasons for the emergence of land rent, I have told you there is the application of law of diminishing marginal utility. Means when the land is being used for the first time, it will give you more output. When the same piece of land is being used for the second time, the output will reduce. Okay, if the optimum number of workers are working on the land, so it will produce good output. If the additional workers are being employed additionally on the same piece of land, so of course the output is going to reduce. So this way there is application of diminishing marginal utility, the diminishing marginal return in case of land. So that is why it is the one of the assumption under the Ricardian theory of rent. So here we have seen the meaning and the concept of Ricardian theory of rent, and we have seen on what assumptions this theory is based. In next lecture, we are going to see the explanation of this theory along with the chart and the graph. Till then, please go through the lecture. In case of any doubt, contact. Thank you so much.